It's only on the E! News channel.
The election posters are up and the politicians are dancing at political rallies across the nation. But is this enough to get your vote? How did the politicians communicate with you? Did you get an SMS from your local councillor? Did they tweet? Are they on Facebook? Tebe Ikalafeng of Ikalafeng Brand and Jonathan Houston of Taluma talked to us about how well the parties communicated. Guys, welcome. Do you think the ANC, Tebe, used its brand as this, the party that liberated me and so forth? Did they capitalize on that in this election?
Well, I think what the ANC did, perhaps not as well, is they arrived late to the scene, and unfortunately unfortunately for the ANC, let the DA set the pace. But of course, what they did, as they did in 2009, they came with a much more dominant yellow ANC branding, which people are familiar with.
Did that hurt the ANC, the fact that they arrived a bit late on the scene? I mean, it's been said across the board that they did arrive late.
Well, I think in many ways it hurt them because it tended to perhaps communicate the message that where we don't need to be as proactive, or perhaps we're not as ready for you, or perhaps it tended to even say to the broader electorate that perhaps like the DA says, from a service delivery or from a messaging delivery, we're also arriving late. So those are subtle messages which are unintentional, which tend to happen when your campaign happens the way it happened for the ANC.
Jonathan, what did the DA do? What is it doing, and what kind of messages is it putting across?
Well, I think what the DA did right is kind of what Tebe was just saying about the ANC. They almost put across an idea that they're a bit complacent about how they wanted to handle their campaign, and especially how they use the different medias that are available to them. What the DA managed to do really well is they integrated all of their messages across all of their campaign platforms. They used billboards, they used TV, they used radio, they used social media, and they used other platforms that are digital, where a lot of the emerging market is now positioning themselves. You can find practically anybody on Twitter, on Facebook, and that's where the DA positioned themselves really well.
It's the ANC. I mean, I was surprised that President Zuma only started tweeting this Tuesday. Is that again, the ANC being a little bit late on the take-up?
Well, yeah, I mean, for some reason, the ANC does seem to be a bit late on many of these important issues as far as the campaigning, particularly in this instance. And of course, the biggest problem about that has got to be the fact that the DA has been single-minded, the ANC has been all-minded, and everybody else has been any-minded. And as a result, people have to try and navigate through all that to pick the one party that works.
Is that a huge failure, the lateness of that?
Is that? But I think what would be interesting to see is he's tweeted once and he's got 8,000 followers. If he tweets again, will he get more followers, and what's he going to be saying? Second to that is who's actually going to be running his Twitter campaign for him? Is it going to be him himself? Does he have the time to afford to do that? Or is it going to be a campaign secretary that's going to do it for him, controlling the messages, controlling what he says? Other parties haven't had that luxury to have somebody do it for them. You can see it's physically them tweeting and Facebooking as they're going about their day and campaigning. The second thing to that is also, as much as social media is a factor now, and the different campaigns are being used now, are we going to see that continuing once the elections are finished? Are the parties going to continue using social media, interacting with the general public and saying, this is who we are, this is our message, interact with us and find out exactly what's happening?
But social media has its problems. I mean, I've realized, I put up an article on some other website, the responses to this, it's freedom out there, and some of them can be pretty hectic.
Absolutely, you can't control what people are saying.
So it's not straightforward.
It's not, and I think if you hit the nail on the message, you've been pretty precise with your point there, in terms of what the ANC and all the parties have got control over is where they place the message. And that's probably, again, another area where you see some of the challenges that the ruling parties perhaps have had. I live in the northern suburbs, and you can imagine I'm now beginning to see Greek, I'm beginning to see Portuguese, I'm beginning to see languages I never knew existed in my area. But also I'm beginning to see visuals within the messaging that are said, but this is perhaps not, should be maybe in Diepsloot, maybe not in Bryanston or all those. So those are, but again, those are symptoms of arriving late to the party, where you now have to throw everything out instead of trying to message, as well as to sequence your messaging and as well to locate it in the right places.
Someone was saying earlier on, one of the analysts, about the ANC and President Zuma being the face. I mean, I've been amazed at how much, particularly the big billboards on the highways and so forth, President Zuma's face and just one straight message, usually vote for the ANC or so forth. And the DA went the other way. You have what Lady Nzimana said, Madam and two stooges, which is Helen Zille and two other black candidates. What are the messages there?
The messages, I think, are sorry, Tebe, the messages are kind of twofold. They're, by them having multiple faces to their campaign, they're saying that we're not placing all of our eggs in one basket and saying that this is the face of our campaign. They're also saying that we're being approachable. What the ANC's done with their face of Jacob Zuma at the moment, I think personally, is that they're saying this is our candidate and this is who we stand behind. Whether he's the one that's going to control it on a municipal basis is then a different story.
I think what the GA is probably perhaps saying as well with the multiple candidates is to say that here is an identifiable person who's going to deliver for you in your environment. And whereas in the ANC, I guess what's compromised the party's messaging in that area is the list, the issues with the lists and the names and all those. And whereas the DA got that out of the way immediately, but then again, you know, it's a very interesting challenge that the ANC versus the DA has got, because the DA has got what you call a pilot project called Cape Town, and then the ANC has got the masses, and with the masses, you have multiple problems that you need to address, and with the DA they can experiment and do everything that's right within one province or within one city, which is Cape Town in this area.
Tell me a bit about. It's not a straight line, this communication business. You mentioned the candidates issue in the ANC. Both parties have faced some serious challenges in this election. The toilets issue for the DA in Cape Town, and now the ANC is facing exactly the same thing in the Free State. How have they dealt with adversity?
They haven't really used their platforms as much as I think they could have in this instance. They've mentioned about it on Twitter and they've mentioned it on Facebook, but I don't think they've used their social profiles enough to really communicate how they feel about the issue. They are taking it as much as they say they're not. I think there is a bit of mudslinging going on against the two parties, which is always going to happen when we're getting this close to elections. But I think there could have been a lot more messaging around the issue itself and focusing on the delivery that's let everyone down and not who was responsible for the lack of delivery at the end of the day.
At the communication level, if the ANC came to you and said, Tava, quickly, it's Sunday morning, there's a story in the Sunday Times saying, we have toilets of our own. Now, you know, all along this has been a story that wasn't around, and the ANC could afford to stand up and say, look at you, DA, and your toilets in Cape Town. And they said to you, please help us. How do we deal with this PR disaster? What did you have done?
To start with, you must never throw stones at glass houses. So when it comes to
and it's politics. They had a nice opportunity.
But you know, when it comes to messaging and tactical and strategy, you must be sure which battles you're going to fight, because you mustn't fight a battle which perhaps in your own area you may have issues with. But having said so, as things are right now, if I were the ANC, and in many instances they've done that right, is you're going to have to acknowledge it, you're going to have to take ownership immediately and say, we were not aware of this and this is a problem that we have. You know, like I think it's Premier Mokonyane said yesterday, she said, you know, the elections tend to bring up many of the problems to the fore. So I think that's a good tactical strategy to use. Having said so, as a Premier, she should have known that. But if she uses that type of line, well, it's a good thing to do. And you know, look at Julius Malema also as well, taking the mayor to task on the same issue. I think the way to respond to it is the way they have responded to it, and to immediately begin some remedial action to address those issues. Somebody will come back from a political perspective, like a DA or Freedom Front, and say, you're only doing it now because it's elections. Well, at least it's been done. I mean, that's how you have to look at it.
Exactly. You okay with that?
Yeah, 100%. If you identify the problem, you need to be able to say how you're going to correct the problem. And like Tebe said, as many people are going to say, you're just doing this because it's an election year. the proof's going to be in the pudding as to what happens post-election.
Yeah. Let's look at traditional media, TV, radio, and print. How have they done, particularly the two main parties?
They've used the mediums very well. There's been lots of presence, and they've been getting their campaign messages across.
But I have to take issue with it. I haven't seen an ANC ad on TV. I don't know, maybe I'm watching the wrong channel.
I've seen two ANC ads on TV, and I've heard a lot more on radio, and obviously we've all seen the billboards alongside the highway. I think it has to go with who they're primarily looking at as their main driver for being who they're looking for as a voter. What sector of the LSM they may fit into, all of that kind of issues, as to which mediums they're trying to use. The critical thing has always got to be how are they integrating their messages. Are the messages that they're sending to people on Twitter the same as the messages that they're putting onto their billboards, onto their TV ads, their radio ads? And both parties have done that to a certain degree.
Well, I think the most, when it comes to elections, the most effective way, but although as well the most taxing is being on the road and meeting people one-to-one and connecting with them. Because you have to remember that the majority of the South Africans that you're putting up billboards to and beautiful TV ads, perhaps is not the most effective medium to talk to them, because one, they don't all have access to all those, and it's most expensive. I think what the DA again has stolen from the ANC book is how to go to the people and to talk to the people and to connect with them and be on the ground and to speak their language. And I'm not speaking language as in language.
There are 129 parties registered right now in South Africa. In one sentence, tell me who has done the best in this election in terms of just communicating?
In terms of communicating, I'd have to say the DA has done the best at the moment. The way that they've handled their campaign, the way that they've taken social media to the masses.
Kevin?
It's a two-horse race. The DA leads in terms of clarity and focus, and the ANC is second in terms of presence.
Jonathan Houston, Terry Kalafeng, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.